Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Now, my dear friend, Joe KARP, he always says he's been advertising and he's been my friend since we really started this magazine. And he and I have shared so many things. And he continues, though, to amaze me with all the good that he does for people. You know, you could be a professional, as he is, but you also have to have a lot of heart. And that's what Joe KARP does. He has big heart. You know that, Joe.
Thank you. Good morning. And happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah. Happy New Year, right. So, Joe, are you ready for the new year? Are there a lot of changes going on in the new year?
Actually, there's a major change that took place. Major. And in fact, that change took place with so little notice that when we submitted our column for January, nobody knew this change was going to take place. So this is really out of the blue. In the latter days of December, I forget the exact date, 21st, 22nd, something like that, the Senate had passed the bill. The House had passed the bill in the middle of, August, changing IRA laws. For those of you who have IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, listen and listen well. So the law was going to be changed. The House passed the bill. I'll talk about the bill in a minute. And then the Senate did what the Senate has been doing all year. They didn't address it. They had their own thoughts about the bill, what the bill might be, and it was in conflict with the House bill, not dramatically, but substantially enough. And all of the people who do estate planning and deal with IRAs and stuff like that said, well, it ain't going to happen this year. And then on a Thursday afternoon, whatever that last Thursday was in December, the Senate added on to a different bill all of the laws that they wanted on the IRA bill, passed that part of that act, and all of a sudden that Friday afternoon, the Senate and the House bill mirror-imaged each other. It went to the president's desk, and he signed it on Friday before he left for Mar-a-Lago, and effective January 1, 2020, so you're talking about a week's notice during holiday time, the IRA's laws changed dramatically. That's unique, especially when it's something that affects so many people.
I'm afraid to ask, Joe.
Well, there's the good news and then there's the bad news. Okay, the good news is required minimum distributions, what you must take out of your IRA, used to have to start at the age of 70 and a half. This is the good news, they changed the law recognizing that people are living longer and working longer, that you don't have to take your required minimum distributions till you're 72. Now, for anybody who turned 70 and a half in 2019, they're still going to have to take their required minimum distribution before April of 2020. But for anybody else, so if you turned 70 in December, you didn't turn 70 and a half, you can now put off your withdrawals and have the amount continue to grow without any required minimum distributions. The other thing they did that was good is there's no longer an age cap on how long you can make contributions to an IRA. So as long as you're still working and earning money, even if you have to make required minimum distributions, you can now contribute to your IRA. So that's the good news. The bad news is the change in the law. So that obviously, to some degree, defers the income that the government's going to get, right? People don't take money out to pay taxes on it. It defers the income. And without politicizing anything, we've also had substantial tax cuts that have also diminished the country's income. So what did they do to help, quote, balance it out? Something that I think is terrible. But by the way, this had bipartisan support. I think in the House there were maybe 10 votes against it. So this is not a political thing at all. This is legislatures doing this, and I believe solely for fundraising, is they changed the rules for what happens when you die and you leave your IRA or any of those other qualified plans to a non-spouse beneficiary. If you leave it to your spouse can still draw it out over his or her lifetime. And that's the attitude philosophically is, well, that's the husband and wife's retirement plan, and we won't upset that apple cart, okay? So if you die and your wife has 20 more years of life expectancy according to the IRA tables, which actually inflate life expectancy by 10 years, your wife can pull that money out over 20 years and, in fact, recalculate it. So if you died and she was 80, when she's 102, she can still pull more money out because she can recalculate her life expectancy as she ages. However, non-spouse beneficiaries, children, grandchildren, those are the usual non-spouse. Significant other, that's a non-spouse. But generally speaking, it's the children. We've had for many years the ability to do something called a stretch-out IRA, which is the children could take it at their age. So your child is 50. Your child inherits your IRA or a portion of it if there's more than one person getting it. And they could pull it out over their actuarial lifespan, which meant there's a chart for a more regular life expectancy. So a 50-year-old may have, just for simplicity's sake, a 30-year life expectancy. And they could pull it out incrementally over those 30 years. So they could pull out 1/30th, 1/29th the next year, and over the 30 years they could pull it out. That's required minimum distributions. And by the way, for those beneficiaries, it doesn't matter if you're 50 and have not reached 59 and a half, you still had to pull it out, but you had the ability to pull it out very slowly and incrementally so the IRA could continue to grow, and the income tax hit was not dramatic. You understand that?
Oh, boy, this is really amazing.
No, but that was the law. They have now instituted a rule that the non-spouse beneficiary must pull it all out within 10 years. No ifs, ands, or buts except for minor exceptions like a disabled child. But it must be pulled out within 10 years. That changes the estate planning spectrum dramatically because now it doesn't have to be pulled out 1/10, 1/9, 1/8. It could all be pulled out on year 10. Now you're talking about your 50-year-old child inheriting an IRA, and let's just make your IRA $200,000 for that child. It's not going to matter if you're leaving $9,000 or $11,000, but say it's $200,000. And many of your listeners and many of my clients have substantial IRAs. Many of them, that is their pot. That is their they took their pension and rolled it over into an IRA. They had accumulated in their 401ks and IRAs a lot of money. That's the only money they didn't spend during their working years.
Wow.
And it's grown, as you know, the stock market has grown. So let's just take 200. But for those of you who have a $2 million IRA and you have 2 kids, recognize you're going to leave, if you leave it to the 2 kids, they're each going to get $1 million. They have to pull all of that money out within 10 years. Now, if they pull it all out at the age of 50, they're going to pay income tax on $1 million. That is a big hit, 40% almost. 400,000 of that will be gone instead of taking it out in dribs and drabs where they're at a lower tax break and it's still growing. Suppose they say, well, I'm going to wait until I'm older. I'm going to let this grow tax deferred because of the value of compounding. Well, in 10 years, if the increase is approximately 7% or so, it's going to be $2 million to each kid, and then they're going to pull it out, and Uncle Sam's going to get $800,000.
Oh, my heavens.
So it really is creating, and what else is it going to do? It's going to kill what your plan was, which is, hey, I'm building a pension for my kid effectively because my kids are not stupid. They'll, on the old rule, my kids are smart. They're level-headed. They'll take it out slowly. They see the advantage of this retirement plan, that they're going to continue to get this money over the course of their lifetime. Now, all of a sudden, we got this huge hit to the kids. Effectively, as far as I'm concerned, that is the new estate tax. That is the new estate tax, because when you die, that will be taxed all within 10 years if you leave it to a non-spouse. And that's going to change the picture, how people have to deal with it. And sometimes your people will say, well, what do I have to do about it? It's that. Well, you got to really look at things because it's quite different. Suppose your daughter is a dermatologist making highest tax bracket money, and she lives in New York City or Westchester, and she pays income tax to the state and the federal government, as well if she's in the city tax. She's darn close to 50% of the money. So if you give her that when you die, 50% of that's going to be lost to the system. And suppose your son is an elementary school teacher and he's in the 15% bracket. Well, maybe it's a bad plan to leave my daughter half the IRA and my son half the IRA. Maybe I have to work at balancing it better in terms of the net result, not the actual numbers, because there's a 35% difference in the net, right? If she gets $1 million and she pays 50% in taxes, and she's in the highest tax bracket, it's going to be a bigger bite. And there's no longer the stringing along. So people may have to reevaluate who they're leaving what to, and they may leave the daughter more of the tax-exempt money, if you will, and play that out. Also, the ability to string it along. We've done IRA trusts for clients whose kids are less responsible, and they structured it so the kids could take no more than the minimum deductions, because they minimum requirements, because they didn't want the kids to pull it all out at once. They wanted to string them along. They said, you know, when my regular money, you get half, you get half. The other money, though, you're going to get it over the course of your lifetime, so you don't blow it all. And not only don't you blow it all, but you can't leave it to your second wife. You got to leave it to my grandchildren if you die. So things were set up that way. So people are going to have to do. No, we did a lot of those. So people have to do a lot of looking now at their estate plans and look at their IRA and factor it in far more than they ever did before.
Okay, Joe, so this is a very good time for me to have you tell everybody about your seminars, because I'm sure this will be a very big thing at your seminars.
Yeah, we will. And we're going to work on doing more information on this, because we're working on, and just, I will tell the seminars, but the bar, the financial planners, and the CPAs are now working our tails off because we've had no notice, right? Nobody thought this was coming, and it comes on Christmas vacation. And I've attended 3 webinars on this already. Webinars or seminars where you're doing it online since January 1. And then obviously it hasn't been since January 1. It's been after that because everybody's scurrying around to figure out what to do now and how to advise our clients and what options they have. But our seminars for traditional estate planning issues and long-term care and Medicaid issues, and obviously when people come in, we will touch upon this and we'll talk to people about it, but this is a change. Those seminars are coming up in a week and a half. And
can we talk about the seminars? Will you give us the dates? I gave away my last magazine that we just got, and it has the dates in it. I'm sorry.
I have it.
Okay.
I have it. You know that my wife prepares me for these things.
I know. She's so great.
So I am set. On Tuesday, January 21, in Port St. Lucie at the St. Lucie Holiday Inn, that's on Federal Highway, at 1:30, and we go till about 4. We do take a break, and we will be talking about estate planning, trust, changes in the law, Medicaid and VA benefits, how not to go broke in a nursing home, what you can and can't do. We'll talk about your legal documents. And for anyone, this is on each one of these seminars, whom we think we can help, you will have the opportunity to schedule a free consultation to review your estate plan. And I always tell people when they're coming in to meet with us, fill out the information. Let us know about your assets. Let us know about your family. And I always say, every asset is treated differently for estate planning purposes. So those of you who are listening understand that IRAs are different than regular money. So that's important. Next, on Wednesday, January 22, the next day, in Palm Beach Gardens at the Marriott Hotel at RCA Boulevard, right off PGA Boulevard. Again, 1:30 to 4. And Thursday, January 23rd, at the Boynton Beach Courtyard by Marriott on Congress Avenue between Gateway and Boynton Beach Boulevard. Same times, 1:30 to 4. You can get information about it, again, written down on our website, which is KARPLAW, KARPLAW.com. And you don't need to make a reservation, but you need to be on time because we start on time. I just like to do that. And we have a toll-free number if you want to call up if you have a question, 1-800-893-9911. But seminar attendees will have the opportunity to have a free consultation if it's appropriate. And we will even schedule them at the seminar, not to see us that day, but to schedule it. The 5 attorneys in our firm are up to date on all of this stuff, and we can help our clients and prospective clients.
Joe.
My column next month is going to address this.
Good.
I couldn't get it in.
Yeah, in time. So, Joe, this is my question about all this. You have a huge amount of clients. And now, will you, if they don't get in touch with you, will you go back to every client and let them know about this? Do you send out, you have a newsletter, but...
We do an e-newsletter. In the e-newsletter, it's covered.
Good.
So anybody who's on our e-newsletter mailing list has gotten it, and we've gotten a couple of calls from clients. I mean, I can't get them to open up their mail, and I can't start sending. Now, we are going to be going through, once we have the solutions in place and we're getting there, we have clients, we've done IRA stretch-out trusts that say that it has to get stretched out over the statutory time, and those clients we're going to contact directly because they've done estate planning documents related to it. But for the other clients, we're just letting them know what happened. We tell our clients come in every 3 years for a free review. We tell them to bring in their asset information updated. So those clients who come in and take advantage of what we offer will have the opportunity. Now, many people are not going to be affected. If you have a $50,000 IRA, this is not going to have a dramatic effect on your estate plan and your kids, because probably they would have pulled it out over less than 10 years anyway. That's just the nature of that amount and the nature of the generation inheriting the assets, because they would have had to pull out over a period of years, and they might have just said, well, the hell with it. I'm not going to pull this out over 30 years, dribs and drabs. It's not going to be a big deal on taxes. I'll pull it out when I retire. I'll pull it out over a course of a couple of years. On the other hand, people with substantial IRAs, this really changes the picture. This really changes the picture.
You know, Joe, I'm so glad that you shared all this, but I want to get a little bit lighter right now because you have said a lot.
Sure.
What I want to talk about is the trip that you took. You and your wonderful wife went to Latin America. We never heard about it. Is there anything that comes to mind that was really exciting for you?
I have a few minutes, so I will tell you some interesting stuff, the history of it. We ended up going to Argentina, and the reason we went to Argentina is my wife does genealogy. She uses a website called Geni, Geni, where you can do your own genealogy, and other people do it, but yours is private from theirs. If you list the name of somebody, and I don't know this stuff well, so don't call up my office and ask, check with Geni. If you put the name of somebody in there, that somebody else has a matching name, they will let you know who put that in their genealogy so you can contact that person. So my wife put in her paternal grandfather's sister. I forget her whole name, but it's not the same name as her grandfather. It was Parnas, and she put her name. And she knew that her grandfather came to this country in 1919 from the Ukraine, and that his sister tried to come in the early 20s, but for whatever immigration reasons, she couldn't come in, so she went to Argentina. That's what she knew, and she just put her name in for no other reason than that's part of the genealogy. Well, her name pops up with somebody else, Juan Miguel Parnas. They communicate, and they discover that that's his grandmother.
Oh, my heavens.
And they ended up communicating, and so Debbie and I and two of her cousins, one from Florida, one from Arizona, and one who's both in Israel and Chicago, flew to Argentina to meet the family, and we met over 20 relatives. They were sweet. They were wonderful.
Did they speak English?
A bunch of them did, because it's interesting. Buenos Aires is a melting pot city, and the country is a melting pot, and so there's a lot of diversity. But the people who are in certain fields, and some of her relatives are scientists and doctors, they said you've got to speak English because that is a necessary language in those fields. But one of her cousins, who's a psychologist, doesn't do it. She doesn't speak English. She basically head shrinks people who only speak Spanish. So we got to meet these wonderful, wonderful people. We are not reunited. We are united. We had never met each other. They send us texts and emails all the time, photos. Now they want to go plan a trip to Israel all together to go there. We heard some interesting family history. Argentina is an interesting country with a lot of diversity and a lot of interesting stuff. And it was just a wonderful trip.
Wow, Joe.
Coming back, we were flying back. I will give a plug to an airline. We were coming back on Delta. We were their 9 o'clock flight on a Wednesday night, and we leave. We're the last flight out for Delta. We leave an hour and a half about into the flight, the pilot announces that there's a little electrical smell that they don't like in the galley. He said, I don't want to land this thing in the Amazon, so we're turning back. So we have to go back to Buenos Aires, which means we're not going to get back that Thursday morning, obviously, because of flight crew issues and plane issues. They got us back. Delta was amazing. They got us all to a hotel. They had dinner waiting for us at the hotel at 2 a.m. so we could have dinner because we would have eaten on a plane. The next evening they flew us out. They made all of the arrangements for reconnecting 280 people because we were landing in Atlanta, and then everybody, you know what happens with Delta in Atlanta. 2 people stay in Atlanta, and everybody else is running all over. They redid everything for our flights. They booked us back Friday morning instead of Thursday morning on flights, got everybody out. And then Friday afternoon, we got the email from Delta that was the piece de resistance. We're sorry for the inconvenience, but safety is first. But as a result, we're refunding all of your money for the round-trip flight, not just even the way back.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
Oh, my gosh. That's unbelievable.
So since everybody always complains about all the garbage corporate America does,
right,
I wanted to give somebody a plug for the good they did.
Oh, my heavens, that's fabulous.
I figured we'd get 5,000 frequent flyer miles, and they'd say, have a nice day.
Oh, my goodness, that was wonderful, Joe. So, that's a nice story.
Although that inconvenience was so superseded by everything they did to handle that. I mean, by the way, when we left at 9 at night, that was their last flight. All of their agents were gone. When we landed at midnight, all of their agents were back. They were there to take care of us and do it. I was so impressed. You
should be. I never heard of such a thing. Wow. Wow, that was absolutely wonderful.
With the family, and we had what would have been or could have been a negative flight experience into a wonderfully satisfactory ending.
Yeah.
So it's KARPLAW, KARPLAW.com, 1-800-893-9911. You don't need to make reservations. Read about our firm. We have 5 wonderful lawyers. Well, 4 wonderful ones and me working in the firm. We have a social worker. We have CPA, so we can help you meet your estate planning and Medicaid planning issues to discuss them with you. If you don't want to go to the seminar, feel free to call up, pay $500 for a consultation that we would otherwise give for free.
Thank you, Joe. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And 2020 is going to be a great year. And thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Happy New Year.
Bye.